welcome to another episode of Insufficient Friends. I'm Kevin. She's Nikki.
Hi.
And Nick, I think this week we've got a lot that we're going to talk about. So we're just going to get right into shout-outs.
Shout-outs.
Yeah, shout-outs. We only have one, I believe, this week, and that is to Mark.
Dr. Mark Farley. Yep. The St. Louis Paranormal Research Society.
See it.
Yeah. SeeAGhost.com.
Yes.
We're such good hosts.
The shirt, you're wearing the shirt.
Yes.
The shirt doesn't fit me very well. So I'm just going to... Does it work?
They do have really cool shirts, a little gift shop. So the reason that we're shouting out the St. Louis Paranormal Research Society.
Yeah, you keep going. I'll figure this out in a second.
Clearly we're really good at this. This podcast is usually, funny and lighthearted. So when we try to cover actual, things and do real stuff, it sometimes goes well. But anyways, we took a little trip over to St. Louis for the day. A couple weekends ago.
Yes, had a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. We saw the Budweiser Brewery, ate at a couple different good places. And then one of my favorite parts of the day was doing a tour of the Lemp Caves. And we also ate dinner at the Lemp Mansion. But we were the only ones on the tour. It was so cool. And Mark led the tour. Dr. Mark led the tour. And it was fascinating. So before we even dive into our topic today is the Lemp family brewery and mansion. But before we even dive in, we wanted to shout that out because it was a good tour. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, I had a blast.
Yeah. And we just did like the quick daytime tour.
Yeah.
There's also overnight tours, I think, or later night tours, walking tours. There's a ton. So SeeAGhost.com as Kevin's shirt says.
It's also on her, I think on the back of hers.
Yeah, it's on the back.
SeeAGhost.com.
Yeah.
So yes, it was a ton of fun.
It was.
He told us that he usually, he also tries to keep. We were the only ones that ended up on this tour, which is not, I'm sure, normal. But he did say that he tries to keep them to like 20 people at the max, so that it's not
overwhelming.
It's not overwhelming for people because we've been on other tours where it's like, well, we did another tour on this trip. You said the Budweiser one that we're going to talk about later.
It was a massive group.
That it was like 40 people or something in that thing, and
I mean it's still a good tour, but it takes away from a lot of it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, Mark, thank you. Thank you very much for the fun. Again, visit SeeAGhost.com.
Yeah, so go check it out, do a tour, check out the gift shop. It was cool.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
So that's our shout out for the week. So our topic for the week is, as I already said, the Lemp Family Mansion Brewery. So hopefully we do this topic justice, but
probably not because we're not that good at this.
If you listen to our episodes, we're
very honest about the fact that we're not very good at this. So
it's gonna be fun though. So bear with us. There's a lot of family history. It's very, very interesting, but there's a lot to it.
Yeah,
there's a lot of interwoven stories, and
there was just a lot of tragedy with this family.
Yeah,
like just spoiler. I know it's in a movie one.
Spoiler, trigger warning, all the...
Basically, everybody dies.
Yeah.
Like, and half of them are them killing themselves, which is just, I mean, it's a tragic just ordeal that happened to this family.
Yeah, it was either 4 or 5 members. We'll go through it, but 4 members died by suicide in this family, and it was, yeah. So, well, let's dive right in. So, I took extensive notes on the family. I will not go through all of it, but it's just, not only was it a big family, but the historical impact they made was big. So it's a lot to cover. But so the Lemp family, the patriarch of the original Lemp family, Johann Adam Lemp, born in 1798 in Germany. Became a naturalized citizen in November of 1841, but had arrived in the United States in 1836. So he was here for a couple of years, officially settled in St. Louis in 1838. In the St. Louis City Directory from 1840, he's listed as a grocer, which is interesting. So he started with this, grocery store business, which was at the site of the Dome at America Center. I'm used to calling it the Edward Jones Dome.
Yeah, the Dome at America Center. Yeah.
So it's like the middle south side of the building is where his original grocery store was.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Just in general, how historic places get, modernized and taken over, and just how things change throughout history.
Turned into a football stadium.
Yeah. That they left. But anyways. So he had his own, little grocery store. He sold his own vinegar and beer. And then it became so popular because there were so many German immigrants at the time. He focused solely, by 1840, he was focusing solely on the manufacturing and selling the beer. And so he formed Western Brewery. And that was actually formed where the south leg of the arch now stands. Okay. I think it's so cool to connect these to like historic landmarks that we know today.
Yeah.
So a ways away, a little bit a ways away. That's where he officially formed his first brewery. So. Okay.
That makes
produce
where the
German
arch is
lager.
now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So very, very interesting. And then eventually they moved again as it, grew, and they needed the caves and closer to the river, kind of where it is nowadays. But that was kind of the Western Brewery.
Okay.
Origination point. So very interesting. I always just love tying things together like that. Yeah.
And I'm guessing that was a relatively small area because the brewery that we went and saw was the one that he eventually built, which was massive.
Yeah.
Like
as it grew.
It was huge. It was a huge place.
Because the Lemp and Anheuser-Busch grew at the time that St. Louis was booming.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of symbiosis there where they grew astronomically. So the site that we see today is obviously the bigger abandoned now site.
Yeah.
But.
And you're going to get more into the family stuff, but I know with the brewery in general, Mark made the comment during our tour that he thinks that if the tragedies wouldn't have happened, that the Lemp Brewery that name would actually be bigger than Budweiser today because it was at the time a huge name.
Massive.
And
that's what's so interesting about, families and history and events like this is because really, I mean, they not only were beer manufacturers, they also created the first refrigerated train car or something like that. Let me see. I thought I had a note on that. Yeah, and they had offices and distribution centers in a lot of U.S. cities, and then it was one of the first in the world to be delivered by airplane. Like, it just crazy growth.
Yeah.
And not to say Anheuser-Busch wasn't also doing
they were
lots of large things.
They were also doing a lot, but
from what I could tell, the Lemp, it was like 10, 12 years before that.
Okay.
So they got a head start, and if they had continued that, we'll talk about the downfall, but yeah, that's massive. So I think that, is why, people like Mark say it could have been bigger, and I could totally see it.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes total sense because they really did some fascinating things, and the first two business owners from the Lemp family before it got to Billy, which we'll talk about Billy here in a little bit. They were genuinely really good businessmen. Yeah. So it is very interesting.
Yeah.
But anyways, so that was the first little brewery and the patriarch of the family. And then so Adam, his son William Lemp, originally worked at the Western Brewery, the little one that we talked about. That was kind of by the arch. Left, but when his dad died, he came back. So he was the one that really, really grew it.
Okay.
So he was the one that we just talked about, did all these, massive changes. It was actually the largest brewery outside of New York with a single owner, which I thought was just an interesting little fun fact there.
Did it say, you may not know the answer to this, but did it say what the one in New York was? Okay.
I didn't look. Sorry. Once again, I get half the facts.
I guess, so it would have been one owner. So the reason, I guess, Budweiser probably wasn't quite as big at the time. Yeah. But Budweiser had two owners, didn't it? Anheuser and Busch, yeah. So which is two different families, but.
Well, and it could be multiple companies doing the joint venture. Who knows? But I thought that was interesting. So.
That is interesting.
And then he also began to brew and bottle the beer in the same facility, which I don't know if he was the first one to do it, but it was rare. And I think Mark had mentioned that on the tour as well. One of the first to do that because it was rare at the time. So just very innovative.
Yeah.
And definitely had the business savvy. So he's the one that started the refrigerated railway cars and really propelled the Lemp name nationwide.
Yeah.
So just a little bit ahead of the time, I think, of Anheuser-Busch at that time, which is crazy. But so he started a new brewery company, the William J. Lemp Brewing, which started from the Western Brewery. There's a lot of renaming in the story.
Oh, I'm sure. There always is with any of these big companies.
Yeah, especially with family businesses, too, as they go from family member to family member or family to family.
Yeah.
So, William Lemp. So we're now second down from the tree. We had the patriarch and then William.
Son one.
And then we get to his kids, which is where Billy comes in.
Yeah.
Freaking Billy. So.
Frickin' Billy.
So, Billy Lemp Jr., he eventually took over, and the reason he took over, it was not supposed to happen. So this gets us to the first tragedy of the family.
Yeah.
So William Sr.'s son, Frederick, who was, I think, the third son, youngest son. Anyways, he was the one that he was actually kind of grooming to be the next. Yeah. But had significant health problems. They didn't know this. So he died from heart failure, and William Sr. was just so despondent that he ended up dying by suicide. So self-inflicted gunshot wound, 10:15 a.m. That was February 13th, 1904.
Okay.
So before Prohibition, before anything.
Yeah.
And then that's why later that year, Billy Lemp took over the company as president. So that's where that was the first tragedy and why Billy ended up taking over. But wasn't supposed to be because Frederick was very business savvy, like very, very smart, but no one knew he had these health complications because you don't know back then.
And Billy was also kind of a knob.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I'll get to that in just a second. I want to mention one more thing. So another reason that I was reading, and I hadn't heard this before, but another reason that they thought William Sr. died by suicide was his best friend had also died around the same time.
Okay, so
Frederick
just
Pabst.
like a two and wait, hold on.
PBR.
As in okay.
Yeah. Anyways,
Okay,
I thought that was
interesting.
I hadn't read that before. So it said that he died around the same time, January of that year, and then right after the son. So lots going on, and so that was another.
That's interesting. Also, the fact that it's
Because he was up in
ribbon.
Milwaukee, I think, right? Wisconsin? Yeah.
no, I don't
Pretty
know.
sure.
But just the fact that it's another beer giant.
Well, imagine.
I mean, they'd all probably be friends. I mean, I guess that.
Think about how company executives network nowadays. I'm
Yeah,
sure it
but-
was similar
But
back
see,
then.
I feel like back then it would have been more, "You're a rival, I hate you," than it is now.
I don't know.
Even because like
Yeah.
now everybody like they're all so big that it's
Yeah.
there's so much money in the industries that
Yeah.
it's like, yes, we're competing, but we're all making a crap ton of
Well,
money.
maybe because they were in different regions.
Versus
or,
back then, it's
who
like,
knows?
yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure that he wouldn't have been friends with like Anheuser-Busch because they're both in St. Louis competing for territory. But
That's possible. Yeah,
I
don't
am
know.
just making things up at this point.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
This is all speculation.
This is a tangent.
Yeah, this is all
These are
speculation.
just theories.
This is just
But-
I don't know if I have a.
But
yeah.
I mean, the fact is, he did die earlier that year, and a lot of people said they were best friends. So it was kind of a combined tragedy there. But yeah, so back to Billy.
Anyway.
And you said he was a knob.
He was a knob.
He was.
Yeah.
And so,
Nobody liked him.
yeah, he had married Lillian Hanlon, and she actually was nicknamed the Lavender Lady. And I'm pretty sure there's a room named after her at the Lemp Mansion nowadays, the B&B.
Okay, yeah.
Mansion. Because she loved like lavender colored wardrobe and carriages. Anyways, she filed for divorce in 1908, so a couple years after he took over. And her reasons for divorce were, he said Billy deserted her, treated her cruelly, and other indignities were listed. Also, I think treating their child wrong. So they had only one child, and she kept full custody, and he only got visitation. So, yeah, you're saying he was a knob. Was correct, basically. Yeah. So, very interesting. So then, a couple of years after Billy took over, obviously you have Prohibition. It was not that far along after, 14, 15 years after.
Yeah.
So not only was, from what I interpreted, and now this could be my interpretation, it sounded like he already wasn't handling the business well to begin with. And then, other companies, like we heard about how Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch adapted during Prohibition and did other things and kept the business going. Now, was it a struggle? Yes. Did they make as much money? No. But they kept going.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. But they just didn't adapt at all.
Yeah.
So
which you have to. That's just part of business.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, it sounded like Billy wasn't necessarily a bad business person. He was a bad relations person, which is a big part of business. Because if nobody likes you,
if you're a dick, no one's going to do business with you.
Exactly.
Can I say that? I think so. Anyways, he was. So, I know you shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but sometimes it seems warranted. So,
well, I think trilogies are becoming more of a thing nowadays, aren't they? Have you heard of this?
A what?
A trilogy instead of a eulogy. It's a trilogy.
I wonder if they gave Billy a trilogy.
I don't know, but it's instead of
no, I've never heard of that. Yeah.
And I understand when people die, it's a whole different thing, and we don't want to, But there are a lot of people who were terrible.
Yes. Oh,
and
if you're beating your wife and treating people cruelly, that's... Yeah.
But a lot of times when people die, everything that is said about them is always sugar-coated, and it's the nicest things ever and everything. And it's well, it doesn't... Just because of that doesn't mean that they're a person.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if this dude was... If Billy... If Billy was cruel to his wife and cruel to his kids and things like that.
He's going to get a trilogy.
Dude, you're going to get a trilogy. You're not going to get a eulogy. Sorry.
This is so not related, but I did see a meme recently that made me die laughing. We just talked about this. I'm a very happy person, very optimistic, not going. But I've seen so many people post videos if anyone comes to my funeral and gives a eulogy about how I was the happiest person in the room and lit up the room, you are freaking lying. Don't say that about me because I was not that person or something. It was just really funny. So it kind of goes along with, I think more people are just tell the truth. Don't sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
I wasn't the person who lit up every room. I didn't like to be in every room.
Yeah.
So. Anyways. Yeah. Very funny.
I want the darkness in the room. So, it's fine.
Okay. But, anyways, back to...
Tangent, back to the story.
Back to Prohibition. So the brewery shut down. Falstaff, which was their trademark beer or trademark line, was sold to one of their family friends. And this is when they sold the complex at auction.
For minimal amounts of money.
$588,000, which... most people are well, maybe that might.
No, it was worth $15 million or something like that. It was worth something stupid, stupid amount of money. Yeah.
And Mark had an interesting theory about this. Hopefully, he's okay with us talking about this. He said the date that the auction was actually happening was misprinted in all the newspapers.
No, he said it was. He said it wasn't. He wasn't printed until the day after the auction actually happened.
So the only person or the only company that showed up was the International Shoe Company.
Yes.
Massive corporation.
Yes.
And so, I think during the tour he was conspiracy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they are the ones that bought it. International Shoe Company bought it for pennies on the dollar, basically.
Yeah.
So, after that, it was very shortly after that, in December of 1922, that is when Billy Lemp shot himself and died by suicide. So, in his office. And I don't know if that was the same office as
I think it was the
Dad.
same
I think it was
room,
that
wasn't it? Yeah. Which is, also a tragedy. Even if he wasn't a great person, it's still not it's still
no one deserves to be in that much pain or anything like that.
No.
But
that's sad.
So that was kind of the second tragedy of the family, and that was kind of after the downfall. And then the next so that was really the downfall of the Lemp family at that point, because it's no longer, the family's still there, but the business is no longer there.
Yeah.
For the most part. I think there was like some little things here and there, but not really. So the next kind of tragedy is totally separate from the brewery.
Yeah.
So Elsa Lemp Wright, the youngest child of William Sr. She had married Thomas Wright in 1910. They separated in 1918. And then in February of 1919, filed for divorce, citing many things, mental and physical health issues. And then they went through a trial, got a divorce, but then a couple months later, remarried. Like really soon after this.
Okay.
And then the same month that they remarried, on March 20th, so in 1920, Elsa shot herself while in bed at their house, which was not the mansion. It was a different house. And so there's actually a feature film that kind of explores this, because a lot of people thought it wasn't actually her dying by suicide. A lot of people thought it was murder. Framed that way. So I haven't seen this movie. I can plug the movie. It's Lemp's Last Rite, like W-R.
Like her name.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So very interesting. So that was kind of another, tragedy that with this family. That was the third one. Yeah, it's just wild. How sad. And so I actually found a newspaper article about this. So I'll talk more about Elsa Lemp later in my fun facts. I don't have a fun fact today. I have fun artifacts. So
Tidbits.
Yeah.
Not facts. Most of our facts are kind of iffy anyway. So.
If you get it from facts.com. Or was it facts.net?
I don't remember. It might have been facts.co or something. I don't really know. I don't remember.
So, anyways, that was their third tragedy. And then we get on to kind of the last tragedy and the last of the line. So we're almost through the story of the Lemp family. So Charles Lemp, the third son of William Sr., was the final Lemp to actually live in the mansion. Starting in 1929. He had worked at the brewery before, also dabbled in politics, did a lot. But then ended up living in the mansion by himself with his dog and 2 servants. So lived there for 20 years. And then in 1949, he also shot himself in the house. And his suicide note read, St. Louis, Missouri, May 10th, 1949. In case I am found dead, blame it on no one but me. And then signed his name, Charles A. Lemp. So that was the last kind of Lemp family tragedy.
See, you talked about, it was Elsa?
Yeah.
Okay. You talked about her possibly being murdered instead. That note sounds like it was not written by somebody.
If I'm found dead, blame it on no one but me.
Yeah, that just sounds like somebody scribbled something down and was like, yeah, this is just a...
Now, this was 1949, so obviously they have different language and not idiosyncrasies. What's the word for different ways of saying things?
Yeah, they have different ways of speaking.
But it still sounds
It's
odd.
Also, this is also part of the reason, like, the Lemp Mansion is a lot of times listed as one of the most haunted places in the country.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it's because of this. Like, there was 3 people that killed themselves in this house, which when we say mansion, we had dinner at the mansion.
Yeah.
It's literally a stone's throw from, like, you can see the brewery. It's down the street.
Yeah, right down the street.
It's not what I expected. It wasn't nearly as big of a home as I expected it to be.
Yeah. Now, I know there was a basement and stuff. We were only on, like, the main floor, but... Yeah, it's not like mansions now. When you say mansions nowadays, you think of, like, celebrities' homes in Miami. This is, like, a 1900s mansion. So, bigger than the other houses on the street, but definitely not, like, a mega mansion.
Yeah, well, even when I think of a mansion that's, like, that time, like, or in these are terrible places, but a plantation home or something like
Yeah.
that. I think of them as being rather large.
Yeah.
Because I've seen
But you
some
have
of
to
them
think
before.
about geography too.
This
is
true.
in the city.
That's
in
true.
St. Louis City.
That's true.
versus usually plantations, like, because I've been to
They're
so
out in the
many
middle of
that are
nowhere. Yeah.
now like wineries and things like that. I mean, they have massive amounts of land.
Mm-hmm.
And it was probably cheaper to build and things like that.
Yeah.
So
But anyway,
I'm assuming geography plays a part in that.
that's possible.
But because there's another mansion right next to it that is about the same size. That was another one of,
Yeah.
the famous St. Louis families. So
Yeah, literally like, I don't know, maybe 100 feet
very
or something.
close. So
Yeah.
I think that one's a museum.
I think so.
But it's closed when we went there. So. Anyway, so that was kind of the last tragedy. And then after him, the only remaining Lemp family member, Edwin, not the only remaining, the last direct descendant.
Yeah.
Died in 1970. So Edwin died at age 90. He wasn't in the mansion. The mansion had already been, I think it was like a boarding house and a couple different things in the meantime, and then was abandoned for a little bit. And then in 1973, the Pointer family purchased it, and it's now what it is today, a restaurant and inn.
Bed and breakfast, yeah.
Yeah, and tours and stuff, haunted tours, things like that. But the one interesting thing about Edwin, and then I'm kind of done with the Lemp family, his final order to his caretaker was to destroy a lot of the art. They had a lot of priceless artwork, a lot of heirlooms. And this is just a rumor, but a lot of people think, well, he wanted to, get rid of the curse, get rid of everything.
Yeah.
So really in the mansion, there's only a lot of the original details of like the house, like the mantles, some of the ceilings, like murals
But
and
the
stuff
actual
like
stuff that was there is no longer.
Yeah, a lot of it was destroyed, it sounds like. So
Which, I mean, I get that. If you think your family's that cursed, everything in the house must go.
and that's a rumor, but yeah, it makes sense
but
if
I
you're
can
the
totally
last of your
understand
line.
that. Yeah. And I'm guessing, I don't know, is there anybody, did he have any kids? Like, or any of these people?
No, it doesn't look like it.
Okay.
So in 2015, there was an imposter, basically. Jeanette Cooperman with St. Louis Magazine did this story about this guy who was pretending to be a Lemp descendant and had opened, eBay stores and stuff and was like selling artifacts. And there's a lot more to this, and it's in St. Louis Magazine if anyone wants to read it. But basically, the stories he was telling were all based on him knowing one of the family members that had died before he was even born. And there was a lot of like inconsistencies with the stories. So a lot of people just came to the conclusion that he's just trying to profit off of, the family and everything. So
Interesting.
yeah, I'm sure there's, there were some cousins, second cousins, people that are still on like the board of, preserving the history of the Lemp family.
Yeah.
Not directly related.
I'm sure, yeah. That are
From what I could tell. Yeah, there was like
branches
a lawyer in St. Louis and some other people in the area, but not like from that direct line.
Yeah.
So that's the Lemp family. Super in the brewery history too. Very interesting. Did you have anything else to add to the brewery or family side of things before we talk about the tour and then the serial killer?
Yeah. I don't think so. I was surprised when we got there.
Yeah.
Because I'd been to the Budweiser Brewery before. Know that it's a massive facility.
Yeah.
Didn't know that the Lemp Brewery is less than a mile away.
Yeah.
Like it's
so close.
It's very close.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually know before we did this. I didn't know much about this family. I knew that it was the house was haunted.
Yeah.
Didn't know they had a brewery. Didn't
Yeah.
know that's what they were famous for. Didn't know anything really about much about the family. Just know that it was like a haunted home, and like it was there was a bunch of tragedies and things like that. But when you first told me, like, oh yeah, we're gonna go do a tour of the Lemp Brewery, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be like some one building, like mom and pop shop or something like this. And we pulled up to it, and I'm like, this place is freaking
massive.
huge.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and if you think about the caves underneath too, obviously we saw a very
we went into the
small
tunnels,
part of it,
and then there's caves underneath of that.
Massive.
And it's, but it's like,
there's so much that's still closed off.
It's several buildings. It like is massive. Like one of these, that one with Lemp on the top of it we'll put a picture up. Yeah. I don't know, because it's hard to tell height when you're standing on the ground. Yeah. But I mean, that had to have been
it's so tall. I mean, you can see it from far away when you're driving up.
I mean, that had to have been at 6, 7, 8 stories, something like that. Like it's a huge facility, which I didn't realize it was going to be. I again thought it was going to be like a one little tiny like shed that we were
well, if you think about, I think it was like by the 1890s or 1860s, somewhere in there, and like the earlier history of Lemp before the demise. I mean, they were bigger than Anheuser-Busch.
I didn't know that.
At least in the area, you know.
I didn't know that before we did this, so.
Yeah. Just massive. It really is like such a sad but so interesting story overall. Yeah, massive, massive place. And a lot of it undiscovered, which is why the tours and the paranormal tours, it's just so interesting when you have places like this. That
extremely interesting.
You only see a small part of.
Yeah, and, like because we went on a ghost tour, which focused on a serial killer more than anything that we talked about. But it's also like there's tunnels under all these buildings, like just all over the place, where they used to store things, where they used to have deliveries go out of and into and things like that. And it is a massive area. Yeah. But there's also a bunch of there's a cave system under the house and the brewery that links all together, that they used to store stuff in and things like that.
Not even related to the brewery in some parts, because I think he said one of the little areas was like a healing pool. Yeah. It was like the salt water and stuff. So just a massive area.
But it looks like from where you're at in the brewery, it's all been closed off. Like it's all been boarded up.
Well, I'm sure it is very dangerous in some parts, too.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. It's dangerous to go down into caves and things like that at times. So it would have been cool to go down and see parts of it. But anyway.
It would drive me crazy to, be someone like Mark who does those tours and you can't go in some places.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. I think it would go insane.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it.
Well,
I know that some of that is city regulations, landlord, regulations, things like that. But I'd be like, I want to go in there so bad.
One of the most interesting things that he talked about, and this, I remember you said you got a bad feeling in this place, but we'll go.
So creepy.
We'll go into the story of the serial killer after this, but there's a location when he said that he was setting it all up, where they saw a shadow figure on the wall. Yeah, remember this? And he said him and his friend were working to get everything cleaned up so that they could do tours and stuff. And the shadow figure walked along the wall and then through a
by that red light over the door.
Yeah, and through a bricked up doorway.
Yeah,
and
because he said there was he saw 3 shadows, and he told his friend to step away.
Back, yeah.
Or his friend had leaned over, but he still saw a shadow, so he was like, "Can you step over?" And then there were 3 shadows, and then it walked into that bricked up doorway. Yeah,
and the bricked up area, he said they don't know where it goes. Like it doesn't because
it's not on any blueprints or anything.
Yeah,
like that.
Which is crazy. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the package killer?
Sure.
So, this was fascinating.
It's
I had never I knew Lemp Brewery just from being born in St. Louis and hearing everything. No idea.
Yeah, this doesn't really have anything to do with the
it's just
family.
The area.
It just happened in basically in the catacombs under the brewery.
Yes.
So there was 6 women that went missing in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Many of them from basically part of Cherokee Street, which at the time was was a bunch of sex workers at the time, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
So there's these 6 people. Guy was named the package killer because the people were found wrapped or stored in boxes or wrapped in mattresses or something like that. And there's just a bunch of stuff that goes into this. So it's believed that he worked for...
Yeah, he's like a caretaker of
the facility for the International Shoe.
Because it had to be someone who had access to the site.
Yeah.
In some capacity, because of, where they found some of the artifacts or evidence of the victims, I would say.
But anyway, there's, when you go down into these kind of tunnels, the way the land is set up, it all kind of, you can be in a tunnel in one section and be underground, but at the other end of it, you're at ground level. So the way it all slopes down to the river. So since it's so close to the river, and this whole, crazy ordeal, 6 women go missing. For years, they didn't know who did it.
Well, and they still really don't. They closed some of the murders, but there's a lot of people that don't think they had the right person. They were just trying to close cases, and because some of the victims' cases are still open, and some were closed.
Yeah. Well, last year, a guy that is currently serving a life sentence for another murder admitted to 2 of them. I think it was 2 of the murders.
It was just a small number of them.
Yeah. But like you said, it's kind of like
we don't know, was he offered a deal?
Yeah.
Like, what were the circumstances of the...
Yeah, which I watched. There's, you can find, I didn't watch all of them, but one of the stations in St. Louis has the confession tapes, like the meeting that he had with police when they basically used the evidence to tell him that he was gonna do it. And it's like 6 hours of videos that you can watch where they just were talking to him in like an interview. But there's just a lot. I don't really know how to get into it because there's so many different things that happened.
Basically, so when you enter this part of the brewery, you go down like some stairs and underneath the stairs and kind of around it is this area called the pit.
The pit, yeah. It's where the elevator doesn't work anymore. It's the pit of the elevator shaft.
It's a restricted area now, but it wasn't when this supposed, serial killer caretaker was taking care of the property. So that is where they found, I can't remember exactly what Mark said they found there, soda bottles, things, and dessert cakes and stuff from that time, from the 90s.
It was like food.
Based on expiration dates and stuff like that.
And he also said they found a handprint on the wall or something like that, like a greasy handprint on the wall, which somebody asked about later.
Yeah, when so Mark thinks that, and hopefully he's okay with us talking about this. I highly encourage everyone to go hear the tour and hear it from Mark himself, because he obviously tells it way better. But it is so fascinating. So he thinks that the serial killer took the tour in 2020.
Yeah.
Because he asked if the handprint was still there, and
which is weird. And he
said
that was
a restricted area. How do you know that there's a handprint there?
Which is crazy.
Yeah. So, and then there was also the room that was unearthed. So there was a psychic medium that, and so sorry, I didn't take down her name. I forget her name now. But she, before they unearthed this other room, she had said, I feel like I'm communicating with someone who was trapped in a super, super shiny white brick room. And then a couple years later, or sometime later, they unearthed another part of this area. And sure enough, the old vault where, the truck drivers would come in and they would take money and things like that, is a shiny brick room.
Yeah. Shiny white brick room.
Yes.
Yep.
It's so specific, too, because it doesn't sound that specific when you're talking about it, but if you're in the brewery, there's no shiny white brick. It's all concrete.
It's all concrete.
Some old crumbly red brick, but it's not like pristine shiny white brick.
No,
like
this is the
vault.
only room that is like.
And the vault is soundproof and
It's in
dark.
the middle. It's obviously got massive concrete walls. Like you're not getting in or out.
Wild. And so apparently this guy that was on this tour went in there and sat down and was just like acting so creepy.
Yeah.
Like nodding his head, smiling, and just not good vibes.
Yeah. The whole area is kind of creepy, and it's dark, and it's just
it's massive. I know I've said that a million times, but there's enough room to get a car down there and
you
drive
can drive a car through the area.
Yeah. And so if you came in from like, was it Broadway? I forget the name of the street, but if you came in from that street entrance, he said you could drive this white Ford Escort is what he was supposedly driving, which is a massively popular car in the 90s. You could get it basically all the way to that vault.
Yeah.
Which was kind of in the middle, which was weird.
Because you could just drive all the way through, through multiple areas of this building and just end up there.
So I was not expecting that on this tour, but it was fascinating. It was I loved it. So I highly, highly recommend everyone go take the tour.
Seacoast.com.
Whether you do the day tour or a walking tour or whatever, just do it. It's so interesting.
Yes.
So.
And we want to again thank Mark for the tour because it was a lot of fun.
Very much.
And it was a lot of information.
Yeah.
And he did a great job of going over everything and talking about it.
Yeah, and it was like an hour and a half maybe, not like some massively long tour for what we did. So it's doable if you're just doing a day trip or they have longer ones. Lots of options. So yeah, hopefully we did this topic justice.
I hope so.
We're
not very good
all
at
over
this.
the place sometimes, but just so fascinating.
Yeah. And again, like I said, thanks to Mark because that tour was awesome. Recommend it for anybody, especially if you're like a paranormal type person, or just if you like the history. Like it's because he goes over a lot of he went over a lot of the history of the family and stuff too when we were down there. So, and it's cool to see different parts of the history and things like that.
And he's just an interesting and nice person too with lots of good stories. And go visit the Lemp Mansion. We had dinner there. You can also stay there.
You can do tours, I think.
Their food was really good. Yeah. I loved it.
It's relatively, it's not that expensive either.
We met Stevie there. Hi, Stevie. I don't think you listen to this anymore, but that's okay. But it was nice having dinner with you.
Oh, man.
Anyways, did you have anything else about or do you want to move on to fun facts?
I don't think so. I think, that's... yeah, so, anyway.
Start?
Go for it. No, you can go for it. Last I got in trouble last...
No, you only got in trouble because I thought you were going to go first and steal my fun fact. And to be fair, it was extremely close.
It was close-ish, yeah.
Yes. Anyways... So I have like a fun like theory and then two really interesting newspaper article headlines that I'll read that I will also post on our Instagram. So not really fun facts, more like just things, interesting tidbits related to this. So one of the interesting things I read, because I read so many different sources when, prepping notes for this. One of them was more like a blog type thing. And talking about the family dynamics of the time, all the wealthy families in St. Louis. And they said Elsa Lemp would be compared to like a Paris Hilton nowadays. Like that was her vibe in the grand scheme of, all the wealthy families in St. Louis.
Yeah.
They said nowadays she'd probably be very similar to like a Paris Hilton. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
It's just the same thing like we talked about with the locations and taking historic locations to what they are now.
Yeah, just like
historic people the
daughter of a rich person who's that makes
like a socialite.
Yeah.
Very interesting. But also kind of business savvy. Paris Hilton's business savvy. Anyways, so I thought that was cute and funny. But there's two articles that I found related to Elsa because obviously being one of the only women in the family and having a tragedy tied to her, I did a lot of reading on her specifically. So this is a headline from 1910 in the New York Times, and the headline will read, and I'll post these on Instagram. Miss Elsa Lemp, the only unmarried daughter of the late William J. Lemp, will shortly announce her engagement to Thomas H. Wright, a wealthy St. Louis bachelor. This became positively known to friends of the families. Neither of the principals would speak for publication, nor would any near relative affirm or deny the engagement. So that was a New York Times headline, and I thought it was funny because it's like an old-timey gossip
Yeah.
headline.
I mean, I think gossip
Neither
was,
principal were confirmed nor denied.
It's very tabloidy sounding, yes.
Yeah, I thought that was cool. So that was 1910 in the New York Times. So it's interesting. Like, obviously, these families were known.
They were known
nationwide. Yeah. And then the other headline was from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, which, just like the New York Times, is also still around nowadays. So this one reads, this was from the day after her death. Mrs. Words. We're getting to the end of a long episode, and my brain is done. Mrs. Thomas H. Wright kills herself. And then the subheading was, shoots self after attack of indigestion and acute depression.
Those are two random things to put together.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So that's why I
and acute depression I get. Indigestion is a weird one.
So it had to have been like nowadays I went to the hospital 3 times. They told me I had indigestion and I had to get emergency gallbladder removal surgery. So imagine back then the things that they blamed on indigestion. It could have been like stomach cancer and a doctor probably would have said indigestion.
That's true.
So I thought that was wild. So there was way more to the article. That was just the headline and subheadline. But just so interesting to see, we talk about the language and things like that and how that changes over time and just wild. But
so mine is from around the time, but not directly linked to the family. It's more St. Louis based.
Yeah.
So St. Louis in the early 20th century was basically an industrial hub.
Yeah.
It was a very big city. It grew rapidly. It was also the first city to have a gas station.
Oh, really?
And the first automobile accident.
What a fact.
Which is interesting. So
when was that? Did it say a year?
It doesn't say exactly. It just says that this is from, by the way, stlouismo.gov. So this is from the city itself. It says the increasing popularity of the automobiles caused congestion downtown as early as the 1920s. Rapid transit schemes were proposed but never seriously considered.
So that makes total sense because I think it was 1950 was the height of the population in St. Louis.
Yeah, it got
like
to
over 800,000.
856,000, yeah.
Yeah, and now it's like, I looked up, nowadays it's 200 something?
I thought it was 6, but that's also, so there's a difference, and there's
between
a reason
like the county
for this.
And...
It's because eventually St. Louis was cut into
that
a smaller area. So St. Louis at one point used to be a very large area.
Yeah.
And for political reasons, I guess, at some point, I don't remember exactly what had happened, they cut St. Louis out. So if you look at a map of Missouri, St. Louis City is a county, and so is St. Louis County. But the city of St. Louis is only it's like a mile by 6 miles. It's a very small area.
St. Louis City 1950 versus St. Louis City 2022 is very different because I think that was the last population data I saw.
The metro area is almost 2 million, I think, or something like that. So they did something with it at some point, and I don't remember exactly when it was, that they cut out the city. So it's a very...
Is that gerrymandering?
I don't...
Is that when they redistribute?
No, because gerrymandering is gerrymandering is a thing with drawing political lines and making it go weirdly so that it incorporates certain people. This was something with... I don't exactly know why. Which is, again, this is why we're not that good at this. Yeah. I didn't know we were going to talk about this either. But, yeah, St. Louis is
Sorry, I asked a lot of questions.
It was cut into a weird thing that made it to where St. Louis was no longer a major, a huge population center. There were still a lot of people in the area, but St. Louis itself was not that many people. And it's still that way today, so... Yeah, if you look at a map of Missouri, there's like a little tiny little spot right next to the river, along the river, that is St. Louis City, and then everything else is the county. So.
And then all the suburbs. It is a massive area when you include the suburbs and everything.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I mean, go figure. Missouri being having like the worst fun facts.
Also, we're just the worst at finding them too. There's interesting things about Missouri, but anyway, thanks for listening. Again, thank you, Mark. Visit seeaghost.com.
Yep.
Go do the tour. We had a blast. We would recommend it for anybody, whether you like history or ghosts or whatever. And they have a bunch of different tours of different things too in that area. So
yeah, absolutely.
Again, so thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. Let us know if you want us to go talk about something else. We got some other trips planned. And we will talk to you guys next week.
Bye.